Hello, everyone. Welcome to our special event today, Women's Voice, Global Writers in Dialogue, organized by Archer, American-Romanian Coalition for Human and Equal Rights, a group of anti-discrimination activists. I'm Mihaela Campion. I'm the founder, and I have the honor and pleasure today to introduce our guest speakers, Pakistani-American novelist Soraya Khan and Romanian-American playwright and poet Saviana Stănescu. Welcome and thank you for being here today and accepting our invitation. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much, Mihaela. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here with Soraya.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I would like to let those who are watching us today what we are going to do here. So after a short introduction of our guest speakers, Soraya Khan and Saviana Stănescu will read from their work. They will read excerpts of their work, and that will be followed by a conversation, a dialogue about their inspiration, about their joys and challenges as multicultural women writing. Both of them are writers, and they are writing at the intersection between personal and political. At the end, we will reserve a few minutes for Q&A. So I would invite everyone to write comments and questions during the event. Again, thank you so much for being here with us today. I would like to start by introducing Soraya Khan. She's the author of novels Noor, Five Queens Road, and City of Spies, which received the Best International Fiction Book Award Sarjak International Book Fair in 2015. Soraya's work has appeared in several publications, including Long Reads, The Canyon Review, North American Review, and Journal of Narrative Politics. Currently, Soraya is working on her memoir, which I'm very curious to see when it's going to come out. Saviana Stănescu is a cutting-edge Romanian playwright. She's also a poet and an artivist based in New York. Her US plays, just to mention a few, include Aliens with Extraordinary Skills, an amazing play that I had the pleasure to see it live, Ants, White Embers, Lenin's Shoe, Waxing West, What Happens Next, Be Trapped Inside the Window, and many others. Honors include, just to mention a few of them, Fulbright, Indie Theater Hall of Fame, Indie Theater Person of the Year, Best Romanian Play of the Year Unitaire Award. Saviana, an associate professor of playwriting and contemporary theater, is also the founder of Immigrant Artists and Scholars in New York. Again, welcome, and we are very excited to hear your readings. And I would like to start by inviting Soraya to read from Noor, a novel about war, the fragility of human relationships, and the power of love.
Thank you so much, Mihaela, and thank you also to your organization. Saviana, also thank you for inviting me to be part of this. It's a pleasure. I'm going to read from Noor, as you said, and I'll be reading from the middle of the book, so just a little bit of information to ground you. The section, first of all, most of Noor takes place in Islamabad, Pakistan, in the early 1990s. We are about 2 decades after the 1971 war when the story opens. It was out of that war that Bangladesh was born. Ali, one of the characters, was a soldier who fought in East Pakistan prior to this scene. At that time, when he came back, he brought with him a little girl of 5 and 6, who is now grown, married, has her own child, the youngest of whom is Noor. And Noor is somehow different. We don't really quite know how, except that she has this uncanny ability to paint these marvelous scenes. So we begin. Ali came across Noor's drawing while he was tidying some newspapers in the lounge. It was caught between the morning and afternoon dailies, a burst of energy tucked in black newsprint. On principle, Ali liked anything Noor drew, although he was partial to the foods she managed to illustrate so exactly he sometimes found himself with an appetite after looking at them. The drawing Ali held in his hands was slightly different from what Noor usually drew. It lacked a caption from Sajida, no storm or rain or any other description. More importantly, the brown-black of the background, the images of torn, upside-down trees and shattered boats were drawn from an odd perspective, as if from above rather than inside the scene. Yet there was a special mist of gray that ran across the picture, so certainly Ali knew at first glance, that of East Pakistan's monsoons. The contradiction that struck Ali was that one had to be inside the rain, feel it beat down steadily to know the color, the length of the sheets. Nothing less would do. He knew this unequivocally. Now, whenever the monsoons arrived, planting a roar inside his head, he lay awake in his bed, recalling the symmetry of falling sheets of rain, the pounding of the drops, the sinking mud. Ali thought of the last monsoon season in Islamabad and remembered, with a start, how he and Noor had stood in the middle of the courtyard one suffocatingly hot day when the skies emptied with rain and steam rose like smoke from the fine marble slab and the red bricks of the house. The two of them danced and slipped on the drowning marble, celebrating like poor, unclothed children in the alleys of a Rawalpindi bazaar, before Sajida put a stop to their fun. Was it gray like that? Ali tried to recall, suddenly able to smell the mud and rain months later on a day in April when the sky held nothing but brilliant sun. The drawing stayed with Ali, and he finally understood where it belonged, with the seas for cyclone. Late at night, lying in bed with a sheet pulled to his chin, hands next to his sides, palms flat, ready, as had been his habit in the army, he recalled what he had seen. From above, in the airplane, there was no question. East Pakistan was beautiful, lush and green the way West Pakistan never was, even during the monsoons, snaking rivers and endless tributaries flowing like life itself through the rich fields. The earth so fertile, it hardly needed any seeds. The land is black like the people, someone had said, only not as lazy. The flight lasted hours. It circled around the tip of India, and when the plane couldn't land in Dhaka because of the fighting, back again down to wait in Sri Lanka. 21 hours later, again morning, it landed in Dhaka. Dried mud was preserved in the most unlikely of places. Tops of trees, airplane hangars, tin roofs of the barracks. Who hadn't heard about the cyclone? East Pakistan, it was said, always and forever unlucky in the mouth of the Bay of Bengal. By the time I got there, the bloating buffaloes had long since fed the crows and the flies. Carcasses crumbled across the land. The air was heavy, but not with rain. Everything, living or not, seemed alive with hate. The roads, the trees, the bicycles, the bodies. The first night walking the streets of Dhaka looking for miscreants, I scarcely dared to breathe. Within hours, I was gulping at the air greedily, as if, already then, to prove I was still alive. Come back home, Auntie had said. But right then, it was so far away, it might have been another world, if it existed at all. Did you know that? Sitting in his armchair, glancing at the newspaper headlines, Ali heard Noor dragging her bucket of supplies across the brick path in the courtyard, along with a slight limp of her once broken leg, keeping her bare, flat feet inside the rectangles of the bricks, never on the lines, resulted in slow going. Some minutes later, she presented herself in front of Ali for her morning embrace in a freshly starched dress while the cook readied her plate. Noor was in a cucumber stage, and for the second time that day, the cook had scraped out the seeds and carved what remained into identically sized triangles. The cyclone lay on the cocktail table next to the cucumbers. See? Noor asked, picking it up. My artiste, Ali said, and although he was sitting, he attempted a waist bow. Noor squealed with delight. Bow to the queen, she exclaimed, standing, the ruffles on her frock suddenly appearing regal. Kya? Ali said, asking Noor to identify the animal she'd drawn. Buffalo, Noor said. Fat. Fat indeed, Ali said. Noor picked up the salt shaker. She unscrewed the cap, took out a pinch of salt, and sprinkled it on the tens of tiny triangles on her plate. You've seen a buffalo? Noor asked. Ali studied the painting, looking beyond the mist. He looked at it from different angles, tilting the paper this way and that, examining the animal. Eyes bulging, gone maybe, the head small compared to the immense belly, fat and stiff, dead. Startled at the details of the drawing, he looked from the buffalo to his granddaughter. You've seen a buffalo like this? Noor asked again. He let a few minutes pass. People like this, Ali said, so softly he wasn't sure Noor heard him above the crunch of her cucumbers.
Thank you, Soraya. We'll follow with inviting Saviana to read a few poems. I would imagine with women protagonists. I'm not sure, but I guess the typical protagonist that Saviana feature in her work, along with rebels and outcasts, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the first poem is called Google Me, from my first book of poetry in English. It was written about 15 years ago in New York. Google me. I had to move into another language. Mine was too small, too poor, too lazy, too beautiful, but self-destructive in an old-fashioned romantic way. The words grew to fight with each other and die on cyber battlefields, defeated by the god of internet and the American dream, always reborn out of the ash of our daily nightmares. Google me, Google me. Everyone I know Googles me now. Google is my proof that I exist. I think, therefore I am. No, I have a website, therefore I am. www.saviana.com. That's why I really needed to move into the English language. So people who Google me can understand who I am and what I am doing on this noisy earth. I called the movers to help me. No one answered. But I must say that the voice of the machine answering my call was really sweet. She said, thank you for calling Global Movers. You need a passport, you need a visa, you need to wait in line in the American embassy in Bucharest. You need to get up early. There are people waiting since last night, sleeping on the sidewalk across the embassy. You can't stay on the same side. There are guards guarding and you don't have an American passport. So thank you for calling and try again during our office hour. Although we don't actually have office hours, we are an internet company. Visit our website. You can travel wherever you want on our website. We are looking forward to your feedback. Write it down on globalmovers.com. So why do I need to move at all? Why do I need to travel? There's a McDonald's on my block in Bucharest. There's a cinema with Hollywood movies 2 blocks away. I've got a laptop, a DVD player, an American dishwasher. Everything is fine. Global movers, I don't need you. I'll just stay here in my small Romanian apartment. I'll Google everything and everybody. I live a full life in English without subtitles, and I'll never move. I'll never talk. But I will have a funny screen name like Peaches in the Sun or Hole in the Flag. Now I'll read two of my old poems from a series called Buried Alive, written at the end of the last century. To preface them, I must tell you a little story. I was born in Bucharest, Romania, but I was raised by my maternal grandparents in the small medieval town of Curtea de Argeș, Argeș Court, the first capital of Wallachia. Romania's kings are buried there at the famed monastery and cathedral of Curtea de Argeș. It's close to Vlad the Impaler's fortress, but I don't want to bring the stereotype of Dracula into this story. I need to tell you about the legend of the cathedral, the master builder Manole. The Romanians in the audience know it very well. It's similar to a few other legends and myths of the Balkans, the bridge of Arta, for instance, which I know from my Romanian grandfather, who was born and raised in Albania. To make a long story short, Manole was hired by the king of Wallachia to build a masterpiece cathedral as never seen anywhere else in the world. But the place was cursed, and the walls Manole and his team built during the day crumbled at night. The only way to finish the cathedral, as revealed in Manole's dream, was to bury alive a human being inside the walls. After a few nightmares and betrayals, Manole had to sacrifice his own pregnant wife, Anna, who pushed through rain, hail, and wind to arrive at the construction site and bring her beloved husband his lunch. So Manole kept adding bricks around Anna's body, telling her that it was just a game. Anna begged him to stop. She didn't like the game. I was 4 or 5 when my grandfather showed me the red sign on the magnificent cathedral, the mark where Anna was buried into the walls. If you listen carefully, you can still hear Anna crying. Then in elementary school, we were taught the ballad of Master Builder Manole as a masterpiece about the artist's sacrifice for his creation. I kept wondering, why didn't Manole sacrifice himself? Why are the women those to be sacrificed for men's masterpieces? Why was the artist meant to be a he and not a she? I decided that my role as a woman artist was to get Anna outside those walls and let her walk freely into my poems to tell, cry, scream her story and other stories of forgotten women. Ever since, in most of my poems, monologues, and plays, I have a woman at the center of the story, as Mihaela said, in a committed effort to give powerful voices to the countless women sacrificed throughout the history of humanity, to make them heard, seen, appreciated, and hopefully loved. Here are 2 of my old Buried Alive poems, written originally in Romanian, translated by Adam Sorkin and myself. Francesca. Since childhood, Francesca has always known that at 20, she'd move into the foundation of a church. She had learned that walls taste good and smell like milk, that love is nothing compared to cement thickly poured on the shoulder, a cold brick mortar to the thigh, a course of stone pressed against the belly, that no kiss can be sweeter than the mouth stopped up by a wall that feels warm from the fresh mist of breath buried only a few moments before. For 20 years, Francesca has awaited the moment of her deflowering. Obscene dreams haunt her like a sword. A crucifix pierces her breast, her sex, her brain. All in a sweat, she awakes. The room looks like it has shrunk. Its walls have crept another step toward her. And Florina. One fine day, Florina burst into bloom. Each strand of hair on her perfect body, some say firm, others say thinly soft, musical, and fair, each and every strand metamorphosed into a petal. Yes, a petal. In the evening, Florina combs her chrysanthemums, dahlias, but you haven't seen anything yet. You should gaze upon her hands at the fleshy, sinuous freesias, reaching, mingling, blooming, opening wide. What fragrance when Florina dances. But you haven't seen anything yet, because those long legs of hers, some say like a model's, others say too thin and bony, like daisies tremble side by side in rows, planted in the garden beds of parks. For a long time now, Florina hasn't moved so as not to ruin that sister garden, her Siamese twin. She stays exactly like that. Neighbors come to the courtyard, passerby, tourists arrive to see her, feel her, smell her. So her parents sell tickets just to look at Florina, how she stays so still. She has learned to wait, to understand the sun and the rain, to fear hail, children, young lovers who pluck her petals and recite, she loves me not, she loves me. It's so pretty to see them, the young dandies, the mature gentlemen, all the bachelors who line up to smell Florina's feet, to caress those daisies sprouted from her thighs, to water Florina's flowers with saliva, sweet tears, to make an offering of seed somewhere, maybe some different sort of flower or something like a flower, or who knows what kind of petaled witchery might spring up from the warm, hard, smooth, sweet earth of Florina. For a long time, Florina hasn't moved, but old crones, neighborhood, gossips swear at the very moment she gave up the ghost. Water gushed up from her mouth. Water kept flowing, and an artesian well remains right there in the middle of the garden. Florina. Thank you.
Thank you, Saviana.
Thank you.
Soraya, it's the floor is yours again. And I think you are going to read from City of Spies, a novel based on your own experience of growing up in Islamabad.
Thank you, Mihala. Yes, I'm going to read from City of Spies towards the beginning of the book. City of Spies also takes place in Islamabad. At the beginning of this section I'm going to read, it's the winter of 1978, and Pakistan is currently in the midst of a military dictatorship. The day is very foggy. We're in a home of a family where a young girl, Alia, she narrates the events of her own life. Sadiq is the domestic worker in the family, and his son, Hanif, is the one who's visiting him from Lahore. Late in the afternoon, Sadiq asked my mother for permission to be excused from work for the evening. Kyun? She asked, and in the Urdu English pidgin that passed for communication in our household, she learned he wanted to buy his son a new pair of sneakers. She told him that since everything was more expensive in Islamabad, he should buy the shoes in Lahore, but he ignored her suggestion. Maybe Hanif is going to play cricket again and needs them as soon as he gets to Lahore, I suggested. My mother complained that no one ever seemed to hear her. What she meant was that no one in Pakistan ever listened to her. Whenever it was convenient, people became deaf in her company. Her complaint was usually reserved for my father, but that evening, Sadiq was also guilty. She found her purse and tried to give money to Sadiq, who refused to take it. He's deaf and stubborn, she protested, grabbing a magazine and disappearing into her bedroom. The airport reopened in the evening, and my father returned from Lahore by plane. The general hadn't been at the meeting, which accounted for my father's energy. He heated up the plate of food Sadiq had left for him in the refrigerator and made his own tea. We chatted a bit, but in no time, my father was focused on preparing for work the following day. The clang of metal on metal as our gate latch opened and closed was loud, but the latch took unexpectedly long to fall closed. A moment later, we heard a whispered, frantic exchange that included Sahib ko bulao, but it was impossible to tell if the speaker was Yunus, Sadiq, or the night chowkidar. My father looked up from the stack of unread reports and memos next to his dinner plate. Go and see who's there, he said. I saw Sadiq and Yunus in the driveway, heading to the servants' quarters with the chowkidar following close behind. Sadiq was strangely unsteady on his feet. He wove from one side of the driveway to the next under the weight of what was in his arms. He was momentarily illuminated by the lighting, and suddenly I recognized my favorite red tracksuit. Hanif's arms and legs swung limply on either side of Sadiq as he loosely cradled his son's body against his chest. Sadiq, I called. At the sound of my voice, the chowkidar spun around and barked, Yaha nahi aana. He ordered me to return to the house and call my father. My father dropped a file of papers and hurried to investigate. I followed, but at the back door, he commanded me not to accompany him any further. I waited until he couldn't see me and got a few steps closer to the servants' quarters before a muffled howl filled the night. It sounded like a jackal's cry, but I slowly realized that the wail was coming from our servants' quarters. My mother shouted for me to come back into the house, and I had no choice but to return. When my father entered the lounge where we were waiting, his chin was on his chest and his hands were buried in his pockets. He moved carefully, knocked off balance by what he'd learned. What happened? My mother asked. She hadn't bothered to turn on the overhead light, and the yellow glow from the copper sconce turned the three of us the same color. His shoulders sagged, and he whispered, "The boy has died." What boy? My mother asked. Hanif was killed in a hit-and-run accident. No, Hanif went with his father to the market to buy shoes, my mother explained. My father said nothing and studied her. You're wrong, Javed, she said, undeterred. Irene, the boy is lying on his father's bed and he is dead. He'd given up his whisper. His voice was clear, his words horribly slow. My mother jumped. I didn't believe it either. Are you sure? I asked. When my father didn't respond, I clarified. How can you be sure? 15 minutes later, when the doctor arrived to examine Hanif, I interrupted him. Will Hanif be all right? The doctor, a family friend and my pediatrician, said, I'm sorry, the boy has passed away. Silence spread around us like rapidly rising water, and I struggled not to fall. Then he added, the city ought to do something about careless drivers, lighted streets, hire traffic police, a number of things that we could do that we don't. I found the phrase, passed away, absolutely inadequate for describing what had happened to Hanif. I couldn't bear to be alone. I sat next to my father while he made more telephone calls than I could count to arrange to transport the body to Lahore the following day. Sometimes he spoke Urdu, sometimes Punjabi, and once in a while English. My mother made me hot chocolate with special Dutch cocoa powder and brought me one of her pashmina shawls because I was so cold. My father revealed a few details. Sadiq, Hanif, and Yunus had gone to Apara market to buy Hanif a new pair of sneakers, exactly as Sadiq had said they would. After purchasing the shoes, they didn't have enough money to return on the bus, so they walked home. At an intersection near Polyclinic, a car came out of nowhere and hit Hanif. The car sped away and Hanif was dead. It was as simple as that, my father said, taking off his reading glasses and rubbing the impression they left on his nose. Here one moment, gone the next. Who did this? My mother asked. Yunus says the license plate was yellow. My mother gasped. Foreign? My God, diplomats do whatever they want here. During another lull, when my father was not on the telephone, she asked, Why didn't the driver stop, Giles? Later, he replied. Why didn't the driver stop? I repeated my mother's question, but the telephone rang again, and my father offered nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Soraya. I could listen to you for hours. I listened to the novel.
Thank you, Saviana.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Soraya. Saviana will follow with monologues, right? Same type of characters. I think we can describe them as those who challenge the patriarchal structure of the society. As we know, she is an extremely courageous playwright and poet.
Thank you. All right. So as a playwright, yes, I have always tried to give a voice to those women buried inside walls, real or imagined, starting with my very first dramatic poem produced abroad at Théâtre Gérard Philippe de Saint-Denis in Paris, The Outcast. It seems indeed, Mihaela, that I keep writing stories about people who are migrants, nomads, outcasts, the marginalized, the oppressed, the discriminated against, the othered, in the hope that our multiplicity of identities and multi-rooted belonging will someday be fully celebrated as the new meaning of global. I will start with a monologue from my first play in English, Waxing West, written as a graduate student in the MFA in Dramatic Writing program at New York University. It's the story of a Romanian cosmetologist, Daniela, who fought at the Romanian Revolution against dictator Ceausescu, and now finds herself in New York, trying to figure out how to fit into this new world. Daniela. I've been trying. You can't say I haven't tried. I've got all these self-help books. I've written down the main ideas. Choose your tomorrow, before, perfectionist, misunderstood, love junkie, overreactive, self-effacing. After, flexible, good communicator, self-accepting, in control, assertive. I read them all. I'm dysfunctional, you're dysfunctional. It's not as bad as it seems. Master your panic and take back your life. 21 ways to stop worrying. How to control your anxiety before it controls you. How to make yourself happy. How to stop destroying your relationships. Why men marry bitches. Men are from Earth, women are from Earth. What to do when he has a headache. The 6-second shrink. Fun as psychotherapy. Let's get rational game. 3-minute therapy, change your thinking, change your life. Dating, mating, and relating. Unconditionally accepting yourself and others. Resolving your past. Read them all. But I'm afraid I'm still in the before stage. I still have emotions, feelings, confusion, anger. Those after people, they must be so happy, so peaceful, so empty. Okay. Breathe deeply, start counting to 10, prepare yourself to relieve your anxiety, to relax, to talk. Okay, here we go. Damn it, this is going to be difficult. You don't have the references to our complicated Romanian, Dacian, Thracian, Roman, Ottoman, Byzantine, Balkan, communist, post-communist, anti-communist, pro-American history. All you know about us is Dracula the vampire, Ceausescu the dictator, and Nadia Comaneci, the gymnast. Anyway, Nadia is cool. She never comes into my dreams with her perfectly fit body. So forget about her, she's not in this story. I have more important, heavier issues on my mind. Stuff like life and death. No time to worry about my cellulite, unless a bullet stops by in it. Now I'll read 2 monologues of undocumented immigrant women. They were initially written as part of a larger research I did for a New York City project called Enslaved, developed with director Tamila Woodard, a project about modern day slavery, sex traffic and domestic slavery. Rainbow Nina. A girl dances around a pole. Sometimes it's a strip dance. Sometimes it's the Swan Lake. They call me Rainbow Nye. A nice name. a name hiding the bruises inside me. The foundation is taking care of those on the outside. The purple rainbows on my face. I could be a purple swan dancing in a purple swan lake, a new ballet written for me, just for me, the most stupid girl in the world. When Misha invited me to that party back home in Ukraine, I said no. No, I don't want to go, Misha. Tomorrow I have rehearsals for Swan Lake. It's my big debut on the stage of the opera. I don't want to mess it up. No, I can't go. I stayed at home. Mom made piroshki and I drank a glass of milk like all the Monday nights before. I slept like a baby and I dreamt of being a white swan, dancing until I take off from the floor and I start flying. I'm turning 15 up there in the sky and Mom is making a huge birthday cake for me. A birthday cake spinning like a UFO, taking me far, far away. But not here in this scary stroboscope land, a mad night with flickering plastic stars. I can't wake up, it's not a dream. I'm here and those sweaty faces are staring at me. I'm here and I'm dancing for them. I'm turning 16 today. There's no birthday cake for me, nothing. Oh yeah, there's something. Cheers to my rainbow of bruises, na zdarovia. When Misha invited me to that party, I said, no, I don't want to go. I can't go. I have to dance tomorrow, Swan Lake. But there will be an impresario from America there at the party. You could dance in America for money, real money. No, I can't go. I don't want to go. When Misha invited me to the party, I said no. When Misha invited me to the party, I said no. When Misha invited me to the party, I said no. When Misha invited me to that party, I said, oh God, when Misha invited me to that party, I said yes. Now I will read fast. A poetic monologue, Don't Dream, written initially as part of Enslaved. The monologue was performed by actresses of various ethnic backgrounds in different venues across the world. The National Black Theatre in New York, Kitchen Theatre and Cherry Art Space in Ithaca, Royal National Theatre in London, to name only a few. Don't/dream. May, a foreign woman over 40, speaking with a strong accent. 5 a.m., wake up, cold floor, barefoot, door squeaks, quiet, no, wake up kids, go kitchen, clean sink. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty, make eggs, warm milk, 6 a.m., wake kids, wash ears, wash neck, toast bread, cereals, Captain Crunch, spill milk, little Johnny cried, shh. No, wake Mrs. Wipe table. Kids eat, hate me. Say stupid. I'm no stupid. Call me May, do this, do that. May, not my name. Help kids dress, t-shirt, jeans, socks, shoes, backpack ready. Bus comes, kids glow. 7 a.m., clean sink. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. Let dog Sparky out. Fresh morning air. Good. Enough. Hurry, back. 7:30 a.m., wake Mrs. and Mr. Make breakfast. Omelette, spinach, cheese for Mrs., ham, peppers for Mr. Mrs. yells, sink no clean. Oh no, little piece of pepper there. Coffee, Mr. spills, Mrs. mad. They argue. Big vote today. Big day. More coffee. 9 a.m. Mrs. and Mr. leave. Clean sink, start laundry, to garage, wash car, vacuum living room, hallway, kids room, 4 bathrooms, no gloves. Clean toilet, sink, scrub 4. Get corners. Mrs. always checks corners. Finish laundry. Start iron. Radio. Vote, vote, vote. Too loud. Big day today. Vote day. Don't forget to change toilet paper. 1 p.m. Kids back. Make lunch. Clean kitchen. Put kids sleep nap. Finish iron. Go out. Fresh air. Good. Flowers, bees, butterflies. Neighbors have peacocks. Nice colors. Hurry. Clip bushes. Kids wake. Want snack. Make sandwich. Clean sink, clean table, kids play living room, kids make mess, living room. 6 p.m. Mrs. and Mr. back, stickers, nice colors, I voted. Mrs. throws stickers in garbage. They argue, clean living room, cook dinner, clean kitchen, over, floor, sink. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. Take garbage out, save stickers, nice colors. I voted. Set table, bring food. Sauce pasta, no good. Mrs. angry. Make new sauce. Family eat. I serve. Clean kitchen. Oven, floor, sink. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. Take dog Sparky out. Fresh air. Good. Hurry. 9 p.m. Kids go bed? Not yet. Big day today. Vote day. More iron. Bath for Mrs. Help Mrs. Hair dry. Rub Mrs. feet. 10 p.m. Mrs. and Mr. go bedrooms. Not yet. Big day today. Vote day. Family watch TV. They argue. Clean living room. Not yet. Kids want milk and snack. Make sandwich. Mrs. wants glass of wine. Bring glass of wine. Not red, white. Bring white wine. Mr. wants whiskey. Bring whiskey. Not good for your stomach. They argue. Big day today. Vote day. Winner, bad guy. 11 p.m. Put kids sleep. Mrs. and Mr. go bedrooms. Sex? No. Wash sheets tomorrow? No. They argue. Vote no, good. Midnight, they sleep. Clean downstairs, living room, kitchen, sink. Mrs. always gets mad that the sink is dirty. Shh, don't make noise. 1 a.m., finish clean. Look, stickers. I voted. Oh no, color's dirty. I'm dirty. I want to take a bath. No, I can't. They hear. I wash my armpits. I wash my neck. I wash my face. I wash my hands. I put my foot in the sink. Wash. I put the other foot in the sink. Wash. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. 2 a.m. Go sleep. Don't dream. Dream. Fresh air, breathe, 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 colors, butterflies, beautiful flying creatures with sunflower heads and peacock feathers. Wash my feet. They're honeybees. They make a throne of petals, peppers, and honey. For me, they bring a pillow. Nice colors. I voted. My honeybees vote for me, work for me, listen to me, love me. I'm their queen, as long as I live, forever. Queen. Ah! Alarm, 5 a.m., wake up, cold floor, barefoot, door squeaks. Quiet, no, wake up, kids. Go kitchen, clean sink. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. Mrs. always gets mad if the sink is dirty. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Saviana.
Wonderful, Saviana.
Wonderful. And my impulse is to go and vote, actually, right now, if I could. Thank you so much. What a treat for us today to hear both of you amazing artists, amazing women. So let's start our conversation, and I'll break the ice here by asking both of you the simple question of how did you start as a women artist? And also in relation to that, if it was difficult and how difficult it was to break through as a woman artist. Who wants to start?
Soraya, I hope.
Yeah, I could start. The question in terms of how I started, well, it's kind of a convoluted story because I did not actually know that I wanted to be a writer until I went to graduate school for something else. And so I went to graduate school to study international relations because I was interested in how the world fit together or didn't fit together, especially after having lived in Pakistan under a series of events like the overthrow of the prime minister, the hanging of the prime minister, the military dictatorship. And it wasn't really until I was finished that I thought that what really moved me was thinking about the people that lived in that structure rather than the structures and the system as a whole. And so then that's when I started to think about images actually from my childhood and various moments in my life that I wanted to figure out how to convey. And I didn't dare call myself a writer until much, much later. But that is kind of how it started and how it developed. And I was committed and devoted to my craft almost before I realized what my craft was. I don't know, that's
Thank you.
in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah, for me too, it's a very long story, but yeah, I went through many phases. I wanted to be a painter, actually, first, if I'm thinking of artists. I was a track and field athlete until
Oh,
I was
wow.
13. My dad was a track and field coach. And then I was going through all kind of phases. I was looking at myself as some sort of Renaissance woman. I liked math. I was a sort of Olympic mathematician as well. So I was doing all kind of things. But then when I started to write poetry, I realized that that was my calling, to be a writer. So I basically started as a poet. I published my first books of poetry in the 90s after the revolution. And then it was this interesting transition that I wrote this dramatic poem, The Outcast, and it started to be staged and on Romanian stages first. And then I got invited to Paris, and it was produced at Théâtre Gérard Philippe de Saint-Denis. And over there in Paris, they invited me in 1998, and they started to call me a playwright. And I started to believe it. So I went back to Romania. I started to write plays. I went to study playwriting in Germany for the Summer International Academy. Then I wrote my first play in English. I wrote my first short play in English, Final Countdown. Then I wrote my first Romanian play. And I won the Uniter Award for Best Play of the Year in 2000. And yeah, and the rest is her story.
Yeah. How about the, if it was difficult or not to break through as a woman? Did you encounter any difficulties? Do you find it different to be a woman artist versus a man artist?
Fabiana, you want to go?
Well, I think I already said it, with Master Builder Manole and my obsession with why is this Master Builder artist, he sacrificed his wife, he didn't sacrifice himself. And then, yeah, I just thought that, it's important, of course, to be a woman artist as well. And yes, I've been pretty vocal. I've always considered myself a sort of artivist. I articulated this word later when I was in New York, but I always sort of really wanted to tell women's stories and bring these forgotten women to life in my poems and on stages. And yes, I do think it's more difficult for women artists, especially in patriarchal societies. And I don't know, when I left Romania was still somewhat a patriarchal society. Maybe now it's not. But at that time, it was still hard for a woman artist, not so much to break into the industry, but to be fully recognized for who you are, as opposed to having a connection, your father, your husband, your boyfriend, who kind of pushes you forward. I really wanted to be accepted and recognized and appreciated for who I am and what I bring to the arts, not for a man who pushes me.
Yeah. I think it's a very accurate description. I lived through the same time, so I cannot agree more with that. I have another question about, or in relation to being a multicultural artist. How is that? Where do you find that bridge, or how do you cross that bridge of being a Pakistani American novelist and a Romanian American playwright?
Well, for me, I think that this issue of belonging and home and how to cross borders in my work has been tricky and sort of been a journey for me since the beginning. I feel like my subject matter really is in Pakistan, and that's what my 3 novels has been about, because I'm interested in this intersection between the personal and the political, and my region of interest, because that's where I'm from, is Pakistan. So I have felt grounded in that sense. In terms of my identity, I think after much struggle and much, trying to figure out where do I actually belong, I have now made peace with being in between. And I really find that for my work, being a little bit of an outsider, regardless of where I am, has been helpful to my work. It's made it possible for me, for example, to interview soldiers who fought in 71 in Pakistan. I think that the fact that they looked at me a little bit like, you're not really Pakistani, you're only half Pakistani, it's okay for me to talk to you. I think that actually they felt a bit less threatened by that process. So I don't know, I think over time I found a way for it possibly to work for me, but I think that it is something that I continue to return to in my work because this question of identity is important to me. I mean, our work is important to us because we're working something out for ourselves in our work, right? So, that topic is always there under the current for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me too, the personal is political. I do believe that just, from telling our stories, we are making political art in a way. And I too, as an immigrant, as a newcomer in the US, even now after 19 years, I feel that I had to permanently negotiate between the values of the old world and the new world, that I have lived in this in-betweenness, that all of us, probably the hyphenated artists, the multicultural artists inhabit, that space in between cultures, and we always have to negotiate and find our place there. But as I said, I truly believe that multi-rooted belonging is going to be celebrated. We are not the others. We are actually the fabric of the US and of the world. People who come from different places and they find their own place at some point in their lives.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I cannot imagine how personal can be not connected with political. I mean, especially if I look at how much the political policy affects women's life more than men. I cannot see that separation in my work, in my personal life, in the society overall. So I completely agree with what you both said in relation to that. I have a question for Soraya, if you are comfortable to disclose anything about the memoir. I'm very curious when it's going to be out, and it's a memoir, so obviously it says a lot about that. But if you can give us a few tips here about when to expect it.
Sure. I don't know when to expect it yet because actually I'm still in the process of finishing it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, in addition to the intersection of the personal and political, one of the things that really interests me in my writing and inspires me is place. And place is really important to me. Landscape, topography, the lens which the sort of the landscape and topography that we grow up with somehow, I think, makes its way into who we are. And we take that with us in our lives, regardless where we are. So sometimes when I think about where I've been, the number of cities that I've lived in, I try to imagine how those places might have affected who I am. What do they bring to my work? What do they bring to me? And one of the things was that after I finished City of Spies, because City of Spies is written in a first person narrative, one of the most common questions at readings and in public places is, well, is how much of the story is you? I mean, the assumption is just the narrator is the author. And I have found that with all my books, but in particular because it's first person with City of Spies. So I remember one day thinking to myself, coming home from one of those events, thinking to myself, you know what? You think that's the real story. I'm going to tell you the real story. And so I thought to myself, like, how would I do that? What parts of my own life are reflected in my novels? And so I sat down to write this essay about 5 Queens Road, which is the title of my second novel, but shares the address with my grandparents' home. So I wrote an essay and I told the story that's not in the book, but the real, quote unquote, real story. As we all know, story is story, but that's, closer to who I am. And I started to do that with my novels. And then I thought, it's really not about telling the story, what the real story of the novel is. It's really about telling the story of the place, so that there's Islamabad, there's Lahore, there's Vienna in some other places. And then I started to think about the range of cities, and if they were not already discussed in my novels, what would I say about them? What do they mean to me? And then that's kind of the long way of telling you how my memoir project began, so that it's divided up according to the cities that are important to me and the story of my life there, but they're really bound, but the places are bound in retrospect by my mother's life and her passing, because she was Dutch, and she offered Dutch cities to my, the landscape of my emotions. And she survived, she lived through World War II. And so these themes run through my memoir. So some of the things that I am interested in dealing with in my fiction, I have just taken my subject matter to the memoir. But instead of thinking about history in terms of World War II or partition or 71, I've started to think about it in terms of actual places and also objects that are representative of those places. So paintings and things like that. So it's a different way of thinking about history. It's a way of thinking about history, like what are pieces that we gather with us, that we take with us, the photographs, a vase, a painting. And so it's an opportunity to look at what those objects tell us about history, about their history and where they've gone, where their journeys, and how that maybe is or isn't parallel to ours. So very long answer, but just trying to suggest to you what it's about. So.
No, thank you. I mean, it's wonderful to give voice to places as symbols of humans, right? It's an amazing way of bringing that into the narrative as well.
But also, I think the idea is also that we all come from multiple places, not just the three of us, but everybody, whether you grow up in the country, whether you grow up in the city, depending upon what school you've gone to, where your parents have come from. So we are always, a multiplicity, like you were saying, Saviana. And I like that idea. It inspires me. Gives me my subject matter.
It's funny that actually today in Bucharest, I think it's just over, my play about the Romanian Revolution, the Revolution Project, Kilometrul Zero, just opened at Odeon Theater in Bucharest, directed by a very young and imaginative director, Andrei Măgeri, and who wasn't born at the revolution. So I'm really curious how it went. It's exactly what you said. I went back to Bucharest during my sabbatical semester to write this play about the revolution, because as a college student, I was there in the streets, and it felt necessary after 30 years to revisit that place, with the new eyes, and get some sort of closure. Because of course that kind of trauma, victory stayed with me for so long, and I couldn't write about it. I mean, the British playwright Carol Churchill wrote a famed play about the Romanian Revolution. Probably it's easier sometimes to write something about a place if you come from outside. But sometimes when you experience it and you live those events, you need time, you need space, you need geographical distance and temporal distance to be able to revisit that place. And I'm so happy that finally I wrote in Romanian a play about the Romanian Revolution. And I hope it's going to have a good run at the Odeon Theater in Bucharest. And I hope you will all get to see it.
Yes, it should come here. We want it to come here.
Want
So we
it
can see
here.
it here.
I would add to what you said, the emotional distance as well, that it's very important in order to get to the place of closure. It's interesting, that was the question I had for you, Saviana, so you read my mind. No, I'm not surprised by that. So I don't have another question for you. That was my question, to tell us about the big event in Bucharest tonight. Probably it ended now, but you already said that. So I'm going to leave it here, unless the two of you would like to say a few more words.
I would love to. I would love to ask Saviana a question. Saviana, I read your interview. You know, the link that you sent us for the interview of your play tonight, and there was so much in it that I found that I wanted to ask you about. So maybe I could just do it now. I don't have it in front of me, but one of the lines in there is that you say memory as justice and maybe history as ground zero or something like that. And I wondered if you could say more about memory as justice, if I've got the quote right.
Yeah, actually, memory as a form of justice is a slogan that was very much discussed in Bucharest after the revolution. It was mostly about the people who were imprisoned during the totalitarian regime. So memory as a form of justice was reminding ourselves about those people, having them tell their stories, writing their memoirs, giving interviews. So it's about, yes, indeed, recovering history, reclaiming our history through memory. And to a certain extent, this is what I'm doing too in my play, The Revolution Project. I'm trying to remember people who died at the revolution. I'm lucky to be alive and tell the story, but we shouldn't forget those people who died for us to have our lives changed in such a significant way. So that's for me an important part of our lives, to remember history, to reclaim history, and to tell our history.
Yeah, telling the story,
That's
right?
wonderful, yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought to put those terms together. It's lovely.
And I should say, Soraya, that you know that I'm a big fan of your work, and I love your novels. So I totally recommend everyone read Soraya's novels.
Yeah, delightful.
Thank you,
If you want
Saviana.
something for the soul, you know, definitely read Soraya's novels. Let's see if we have any questions from the audience. A lot of thank you here. One question inspired by the incredible readings. What smell instantly transports you? Where does it take you, and why?
What was the first part of that?
What smell instantly transports you? Where does it take you? Why?
I don't know. I have a lot of smells like that. You know, the smell of a certain kind of flower.
It's a poetic question, I would say.
It is.
I think that person is a Proustian person who wants to take us back in the Proustian universe to the, you know, the smells and fragrances of our childhood. So yeah, obviously for me, food is a big one. You know, my father's favorite food, when I get a little bit of that smell, it takes me back to that safe place of childhood. And then my mother's perfume and Nina Ricci powder takes me to a different place of fashionable things.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Yeah, it happens to me too, to get up sometimes in the morning with a smell, kind of smelling something that is from the past. So I would imagine it's part of that memory of the past that is revealed to us through the sensations of the body, I would say.
I wish this Zoom universe would give us some sense of smell as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I see here another question. Let's see. What do you do if people want to change history, especially educated people who use their influence to skew history towards the political flavor of the day, what is they pose as our friends and community leaders? You want me to repeat the question?
It's an important question. It's a difficult question,
Yeah.
but it's important. Soraya, would you want to take that first?
I guess my response to that would be, there's a narrative out there. People make their own narratives, and I find that what I'm actually doing as a writer is being in conversation with those narratives, right? There's the narrative out there, the one that's reported in a newspaper that educates people in this country about what Pakistan should look like and what the history of Pakistan in the 70s and 80s really was under military rule. But for me, I'm in conversation with that narrative. I want to think about what does it look like to suggest something different? If I were to suggest something different, what might that be? And I really think that that's one of the motivating, one of my motivators in my art is to think about that. And I don't know if it has an effect in changing narratives. I think it only, I only hope that it possibly offers some sense, some possibility for conversation. I don't know, Saviana, what you think, if you have a more direct and immediate approach.
It's a hard question because indeed, people who are in power, they have the power to rewrite the history. Unfortunately, it's always been that way. This is part of the power dynamics of the world. People in power have the possibility and the power to write and rewrite history. What I think we can do, in terms of individuals, as I said, is to reclaim that history and to tell our own story, our narrative. And that doesn't mean just autobiographical stories. It means a story from our perspective. So as long as different people tell their own stories, at least history becomes a puzzles of stories that are told from different perspectives, and we get a little bit closer to the truth. Well, what is truth? You're gonna ask me, and I don't know how to answer that. I'm just gonna say that, I've always aimed to tell truth, to speak truth to power. So my truth, it's about my truth. And I feel that as long as we all try to find our own truth and speak it up, speak our truth to power, at least we get closer to the tapestry of truth.
Yeah. Speaking one's truth, it's actually very powerful, because many times we inhibit that, fearing the consequences of it.
Right.
Okay, one more question here. Do you think women's rights made progress in Pakistan and Romania within the last decades?
Within the last decade?
Yeah.
I think,
rights. Yeah.
Right. I think that there has been progress in Pakistan over the last few decades. However, right now, Pakistani women's rights are under assault. There's no question. There are all these things going on in Pakistan that are undermining women, taking away their rights and inflicting, terrible pain and, not giving them a voice, right? So it's a very tough time in Pakistan right now as a woman.
I think in Romania, yes, there has been lots of progress. I know many young women artists and young of spirit too, who are much more, outspoken, and they are free to tell their own truth, and they speak up. Probably many of them don't feel any constraints from the patriarchy anymore. But I also know that from other young women poets and artists, that there still is the shadow of patriarchy still overwhelming many women artists in Romania and Eastern Europe. So there's still a long way to go in order to make our voices heard. I do believe that we need to support each other, to speak up about other women artists, to reclaim our history together. For instance, I'm a big fan of Frida Kahlo, the painter. I have a bunch of t-shirts with Frida Kahlo. And, yeah, you know what? Let's talk about Frida Kahlo. Let's talk about Soraya Khan. Let's talk about women artists and speak up about them wherever we are. And I feel that that's a way to move forward.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from both of you is that despite the fact that progress has been made in the past decades, right, there is still a lot of work to be done, and we are the agents of that work. I think women need to be the ones to let their voices be heard. One comment here. Storytelling, oral story is the best kind of history. So that's coming from a historian. Another comment, I don't think it's a question here, but let's see. Patriarchy is alive and well, sadly. We have so much more to go. Supporting each other is huge. I cannot agree more. Yeah. I think for the last check, I don't see any other questions that need an answer now, but I definitely encourage everyone who is going to listen to us later. The video is going to be available on the site. If you have more questions, I will pass them along to Soraya and Saviana, and they will probably find time to answer in the next few days if there are more questions to come. I would conclude here. I want to thank you both, both of you one more time from my heart. I'm so happy to spend the afternoon with the two of you. It was a pleasure preparing this event together, and I wish both of you good luck and keep up with your voice. It's an important voice. You are amazing women artists, and we are here as a platform to promote women's voices, and we will do our best for that. Thank you again, and thank you everyone who listened to us today, and come back for future events.
Thank you so much, Mihala.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to us on a Sunday. Hello, thank you all.
Bye-bye.